Hello, radiant soul. If you've found your way here, it's likely because your heart has been whispering a truth that your mind has tried to ignore. A truth wrapped in confusion, in longing, and in that aching space between loyalty and liberation. I want to share something sacred with you, something tender and raw from my own walk through shadow. I recently had to make one of the hardest decisions of my life, to let go of someone who had once been deeply woven into the fabric of my days. It wasn't because I stopped loving them. It was because I finally realized that love alone cannot sustain what continuously depletes your spirit. And right before I made that final move, the message, the silence, the distance, I was flooded with guilt, uncertainty, and a grief so old I couldn't name it. Not because I doubted the harm that had been done, but because I was terrified of what it meant to walk away from someone who had become familiar, even if they had also become harmful. So today, with a spirit full of compassion and light, I want to guide you through what the divine often whispers in moments like these. 3 signs that God is lovingly, patiently, but firmly trying to remove someone from your life. And just as important, I want to reveal the one inner obstruction that can blur your vision so deeply you may miss the guidance altogether. These aren't always dramatic signs. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through the erosion of peace, the shifting of emotions, or the repetition of painful cycles that leave you spiritually exhausted. But before we step into those signs, let me say this. You are not crazy for feeling torn. You are not weak for feeling attached. You are human, and your loyalty is sacred, even if sometimes it has been misplaced. What we must learn, especially as intuitive beings called to higher alignment, is how to recognize when God is no longer asking us to hold on, but instead to release, not out of resentment, but out of reverence, for the journey, for the growth, and for the person you are becoming. So breathe with me now, because what we are about to explore is not a formula. It is a divine invitation, a spiritual checkpoint, a reminder that just because someone once fit your story doesn't mean they belong in your next chapter. Let's talk about the signs and what may be blocking your ability to see them, so that when God says it's time, your soul is ready to listen. And so, beloved, the first sign that God is gently but firmly guiding you to let go is this. They are no longer a blessing to your garden. They have become a weed. And I know how painful that word can sound when attached to someone you once adored, someone whose presence once felt like sunlight. But the truth is, not everything that grows is meant to stay. Some things bloom only to reveal their thorns. Some connections appear green and thriving on the surface, but underneath, they twist around your roots and choke the very breath from your spirit. You may have mistaken them for a kindred soul at first. Maybe they walked into your life during a season when your soil was dry and any shade looked like shelter. Maybe you saw potential, beauty, or promise, but over time, something shifted. Their presence became confusing, chaotic, or quietly corrosive, and still you watered the connection. Still you waited for it to blossom into something better. But love, hear this gently. Weeds do not transform into roses just because you wish it. You are not being called to fix what was never meant to flourish. You are being called to protect the sacred soil of your own becoming. Weeds in your life may look like people who continually stir conflict, plant doubt, and drain your joy. They shift blame, deflect accountability, and leave you questioning your worth again and again. And here's the hard truth. When you stay in these patterns too long, you stop growing. The flowers in your soul start to wilt. The vision God gave you dims beneath the shadow of their control. That's not love, that's spiritual suffocation. And I know, part of you wants to wait for them to change, to see your love as the mirror that heals them. But that is not your job, and that is not your calling. God does not ask you to be the savior. God asks you to be obedient. And sometimes, obedience means pulling the root out before it destroys everything else you've planted. So if you've found yourself constantly justifying the pain, if their presence leaves you more confused than clear, if you are shrinking in their shadow instead of rising in your light, Sweet soul, this is your sign. God is not trying to punish you, He is trying to preserve you, and the garden of your life deserves to grow wild and free, not caged beneath the weight of someone who never belonged there in the first place. Let them go, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to tend your garden well. And then there comes a quieter shift, one that doesn't announce itself with conflict or betrayal, but rather with the slow unraveling of connection. You feel it, don't you? That subtle change in the energy between you. The warmth that once lived in your conversations grows cold. The laughter you used to share now feels distant, forced, or hollow. They begin to withdraw, or perhaps it is you who can no longer find the same rhythm in your heart when you're near them. And while you try to explain it away, blame it on stress, on timing, on anything that feels more comfortable than truth, your soul knows what's happening. This is the second sign, love. A shift in feeling. And while emotions can be fickle, when God is behind the movement, the change isn't random, it's intentional. Sometimes He closes the emotional channel, not to punish you, but to free you. He interrupts your attachment so you can finally see the reality you've been too entangled to confront. And yes, it's heartbreaking. You start to wonder, why don't I feel safe here anymore? Or, why do they suddenly seem so far from me? But instead of running back to seek validation or begging for reconnection, I invite you to ask something deeper. Is God hardening their heart so that mine can heal? This may sound strange, but it's rooted in divine truth. Just as He once hardened Pharaoh's heart to fulfill a greater purpose, sometimes God creates spiritual distance between people to redirect their paths. He may allow the other person to become cold, not because He is cruel, but because He knows you would never walk away if they stayed warm. So He lets the disconnection grow, not to hurt you, but to protect your purpose, because if you kept holding on, you'd miss what's ahead. If you stayed tied to what's fading, you wouldn't have the hands free to receive what's coming. It's easy to romanticize emotional closeness, to believe that feeling deeply is always a sign we should stay. But there are times when a holy numbness settles in, and that too is sacred. It's not that you've stopped loving, it's that God has quieted the emotional noise so you can hear something higher. So instead of chasing the old connection, let the silence speak. Instead of resenting their withdrawal, recognize it for what it is, divine strategy. Because in this in-between, where the closeness fades and clarity begins, you are being prepared. Prepared to walk forward without regret, prepared to release what once felt irreplaceable, prepared to stop trying to revive what God is gently letting die. Let that shift in feeling be your guide, not your fear. For when God rearranges hearts, it's never random, it's redirection. Trust it. But even when the signs are clear, when the connection drains you, when the feelings fade, when the pattern keeps repeating, there remains one powerful force that can blur all of it, keeping you in spiritual limbo long after your heart has already asked to be free. And that force is mental clutter. It's not always loud. It doesn't shout like conflict or sting like betrayal. Instead, it whispers in the back of your mind with words that sound like duty, guilt, or false compassion. It says things like, but she's my sister, or he apologized this time, or I shouldn't feel this way, it must be me. And just like that, you start to shrink beneath the weight of expectations that were never yours to carry. These internal scripts, filled with shoulds and shouldn'ts, become the noise that drowns out divine direction. They sound rational, they sound moral, but they are not truth. They are distractions dressed as virtue. You begin negotiating with yourself, trying to spiritualize your suffering. You convince yourself that love means enduring anything, that forgiveness means access, that loyalty means losing yourself quietly while calling it faith. But love, this is not what God asks of you. He asks for your obedience, not your self-erasure. He asks for your heart, not your silence. And he certainly does not ask you to confuse kindness with codependence. The mental clutter doesn't just delay your healing, it distorts your perception. It keeps you replaying scenarios that exhaust your peace. It has you defending someone who's already shown you who they are simply because they carry a title like family or first love. But let me remind you, titles do not give people the right to trample your soul. Relationships that require you to sacrifice your clarity, your joy, or your boundaries in the name of keeping the peace are not ordained by God. They are tolerated by fear. So if you find yourself caught in mental loops, constantly debating whether you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or too harsh, know this: that confusion is not your fault. It's the fog that forms when your heart is trying to rise, but your mind hasn't caught up yet. And that's okay. What matters now is what you choose to clear. Because clarity is not a feeling, it's a practice. And every time you choose to silence the noise of guilt, expectation, and emotional obligation, you make more room to hear what God is truly saying. And He is speaking not through chaos, but through the steady, quiet knowing that says, "You were never meant to live tangled in uncertainty. You were born to move in peace. Let go of the noise. Let go of the clutter. And the voice you've been searching for, it will meet you in the stillness you've finally made room for." You don't need to place your confidence in your own ability to analyze every moment, every word, every shift in someone's tone. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to figure out whether you're overreacting, being too emotional, or not patient enough. That kind of mental looping will only drain you and keep you stuck in cycles of self-doubt. What you do need, what your soul has always needed, is trust. Not in your reasoning, not in your past, not even in your feelings, but in the gentle, unshakable guidance of God. Because He sees what you can't. He hears the prayers you never spoke out loud. He knows the weight you carry behind your smile. And He knows how many times you've tried to hold on to something that was quietly breaking you. And still, He's never judged you. Instead, He patiently, lovingly keeps nudging you toward freedom, not because you've failed, but because you've outgrown what no longer serves your calling. So if you're waiting for perfect clarity before you let go, or if you're hoping for one last sign that will erase the pain of this decision, let this be the truth that anchors you. God is not asking you to make a flawless move. He's asking you to make a faithful one, even if it's painful, even if it's uncertain, even if it breaks your heart wide open. Because the God who calls you to release someone is the same God who promises to restore what you've surrendered. Letting go doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It means you've started loving yourself and trusting Him enough to step into what's next. So as we come to the end of this message, I want to leave you with something that goes beyond words. Something your soul can carry with it long after the screen goes dark. Letting go isn't weakness. It isn't failure. It's not a sign that you gave up too easily or didn't love hard enough. Sometimes letting go is the most powerful form of faith there is, because it means you're choosing to trust what God sees, even when it breaks your heart to release what you once held dear. Maybe this person meant everything to you once. Maybe they still do. But if their presence now costs you your peace, your purpose, your growth, then it's not love that's asking you to hold on. It's fear. And fear was never meant to be your compass. Faith is. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to see the full path ahead. You just have to take the next right step. And if that step is letting go, do it slowly, do it tenderly, do it with tears in your eyes if you need to, but do it knowing that heaven walks with you. You are not being emptied. You are being cleared. And what's waiting on the other side of this obedience is not loss. It's restoration. It's clarity. It's becoming who you were always meant to be. Free, whole, and fully rooted in love that doesn't require you to suffer to keep it alive. This isn't the end of your story. It's the sacred turning point, and you're ready now